So, since the holidays are coming up, I thought we'd talk about a different kind of Christmas tree. In drag racing, this is what's known as the tree, the Christmas tree, or the light pole. Pre-stage, staged. These are yellow lights, and then it has the countdown lights, the green light, and the red light. So, as your car pulls up to the light, there's two infrared laser beams that shoot through. You cannot see them. They are not red. They are infrared. As your car pulls up, the first beam that your tire will cross is the pre-stage. These will come on after you break that beam. The next, as you pull ahead, are the staged. Pull up to the light, these lights will come on. These lights will come on at various times depending on what kind of tree it is. There's 3 different kind of lights that come on. There are what's known as amateur or sportsman, and then there are 2 other kinds known as pro trees. You have a 4,000ths pro tree and a 5,000ths pro tree. In a pro tree, all 3 of these lights come on. There's either 4,000 or 5,000th, and then the green lights come on. On a sportsman tree, each one comes on, there's a half a second. The next one comes on, there's a half a second. The next one comes on, there's a half a second, and then the green comes a little part. The other thing is you can do what's known as a deep stage, and you will actually roll until that second light, or the pre-stage light, goes out, and that means you are deep staged. But the problem with that is you tend to need to leave a little bit later. You tend to go red because of this when you go to roll out. Generally, when you go, the best time the first couple of times you should go to a test and tune. You can go make a bunch of passes, and when you make stupid mistakes like double bulbing someone, no one tends to get really bent out of shape over it.
How do I know where my tire is in relation to those if I'm in the car?
You can kind of see this box on the ground. It's usually a big square box sitting on the ground, and you can kind of get an idea. If you're creeping forward, you'll see that light come on, the light come on as you break the light. So and the other thing is the tree is way up here, so you'll see this big black box, and you can kind of guesstimate, but you're rolling really, really slow into this. As you roll forward, you're rolling really slow. You're inching. The other thing is, generally at most tracks they do what's known as courtesy staging. If you don't courtesy stage, it can get you disqualified. What that means is you don't just roll in and double bulb the other person. You roll in. When he'll roll in, and then you roll in and cover up your next beam, and then he'll come in. From the time you light both lights, he's got 7 seconds before he gets timed out. NHRA and IHRA, the last thing they want you to do when you pull in, any movement needs to be forward movement. They do not want you backing back into the lights. The reason that is when you're turning 3,000 RPMs and you let go of that button and that car is still in reverse, it goes very badly for lots of people very quickly.
So is that where burning someone down comes from?
Partially, yeah. Generally in a turbo car, they'll start building up boost before they even pre-stage. So they'll pull up because depending on the car, it can take up to 7 to 8 seconds to start building boost. So what they'll do is they'll sit here, build boost, and then pre-stage. Well, unfortunately, you're now sitting at 3,600 RPMs, 3,800 RPMs, up against that torque converter and up against the transmission. Well, if you're sitting there and this guy doesn't pull up, or you do pull up and he sits at the pre-stage while you're sitting at the stage.
Is there a timer at the pre-stage before the stage has to go off?
Yeah, you have from the time this person, or when the person stages, there's technically 7 seconds, but that's a long 7 seconds. 2 tricks that most people don't talk about and professional racers will know about is when you come in, right, and you bump in, as you come into this, when you just start to get up onto this, these lights, your stage lights flicker. Well, you want to get them to just come on, because if you can get them to just come on, you can actually leave a little earlier and get a better jump at it, because you're not going to break this beam. The other thing is the size of your tire has a very much will affect how the lights come on.
So in index bracket racing, you're racing the clock. It doesn't really matter about the other guy and who got to the finish line first?
Not per se. You want to be closest to that, to what you say you're going to run. You can kind of judge how, if you think that other person is going to be very close to his time, you can kind of gauge. There's also a big game that they'll do in bracket racing where they'll fly up to that, and then at the last minute they'll jump on the brake to try to make the other person break out.
So index bracket racing, if the other guy red lights, does it affect you since you're racing the clock instead of
No.
them to the finish?
No. You're actually competing to who can be closest to their dialed in ET. So if this guy says I'm going to run it in, say, 12.5, and this guy says he's going to run it in 11.5, whoever's closest to that time that they said they were going to run without going over will win. If he leaves early in red lights, I can totally destroy my 11 too, but you want to still try to get closest to your number as possible. Because in bracket racing, it's very much about being consistent, doing the same thing over and over and over again. That's how you can race 6, 8, 10, 12 times in a night, and you still need, every time you go up, you can go, oh yeah, the weather's changing, I can change my number. Once you pull up to that line, you can't change that number. But when you're sitting on the drive, when you're on the drive-through or in the lanes, before you pull up to the starting line, you can change that number. You can say, oh, the air is getting colder, I'm going to make more horsepower, I'm going to go faster. It's getting hot, the track is getting greasy, I'm going to be a lot slower. The subscribe button is the one you should smash. I'm D, and this is D-mon's Garage. So when you first get started, you generally won't have a trans brake. What you will do is, unlike what your driving instructor has ever told you, instead of using 1 foot on your automatic transmission, you'll use 2. You'll put one on the brake and the other on the gas. You'll apply a fair amount of pressure to the brake and then start rolling into the gas to bring the engine up onto the torque converter. This does do some damage to the transmission. Heat in the transmission is not good for it. You also have the clutches inside the transmission that are trying to make the car go forward, where the brakes are trying to stop it, because that's what brakes do, is stop things. So as the lights come on, what you will do is you will either slide your foot off the brake and then roll in and then jump on the gas hard, or you will lift your leg off and then jump on the gas. Generally, when you get started and you'll be using a sportsman tree, you might leave on an earlier one, depending on your car, how you stay. You end up leaving on this light, because like I said, there's about a half a second, and then your drivetrain needs to take up all that slack and it needs to get everything moving. So you might leave on here. What you're looking for, perfect, is a 000. Is absolutely perfect. That means that your wheel broke this light at the same exact time as this green light came on. Is if you're looking at your reaction times, after you make your pass, you'll go to the timing shack and they'll give you a little slip of paper, and it'll tell you your reaction time, your 60 foot. It'll tell you your 330, which is generally the first time they give you a mile an hour, and your 660, and then your quarter mile. It depends. But if you look at the reaction time and you have a long reaction time, You might want to start leaving even earlier. Remember, there's half a second between the time this light comes on and this light comes on.
Are there any times not all the lights are used?
Different forms of no prep. It's what they'll do, what's known as an instant green, and what they'll do is they'll actually take these bulbs right out. And then you pull up, you stage like you normally would, and then these lights will come on.
How could I practice these lights?
Okay, one way is they make a small little electronic unit that has the lights, and it'll tell you your reaction time. The problem with those are generally when you first get started, you are not going to have a trans brake. Trans brakes are well over $500 and up, plus it's major modifications to the transmission. But what they have is it'll go through, and you have a button that you hold, and it's like releasing the trans brake. First thing that you'll notice is if you're relaxed and you hold it in two hands. So you hold the handle on this hand and you just touch it. As you counts down, just pull your whole hand off. Don't worry about releasing the button. Just pull your whole hand off of it. The other thing is, as you pull up, even in real life, when you get staged, take a deep breath and hold it. Don't focus on the lights. Focus on the whole area. When these first lights come on, even though you know those things are going to come on, it's going to shock you. So if you're not fixated on a light, generally you're calm, you're focused on the area, and because you have that deep breath, you take that, you're more focused on just this. It'll also calm your nerves. The other thing is when you're holding, if you do have a trans brake and you're holding that button, don't smash down on it. Just very lightly hold it, just enough to engage it. Because if you're pressing onto it, you have to tell all those muscles to change direction. All you want to do is just pop off of it or just slide off of it. You just want to have pressing on it any harder is not going to change the way it works. It's a connection. As soon as you make that connection, it doesn't care. So if you can just slide off of it, you'll have a quicker reaction time.
How else can I practice?
You go to whatever game system or phone you have, and you can download games. There's all kinds of free ones that you can play, and this way you'll get used to looking at the lights, reacting to the lights. You can practice. Some of them you can even do your burnout and everything else. If you have any questions, comments, or helpful hints, put them down in the comments.